Glaciers are one of our planet's most magnificent and vital features. They are vast bodies of dense ice that are constantly moving under their own immense weight. Think of them not as static blocks of ice, but as incredibly slow-moving rivers, carving valleys and shaping landscapes over thousands of years. These frozen giants are found on every continent except Australia, high in the mountains or covering vast polar regions. They are the silent white sentinels of our world, holding a story of Earth's climate history locked within their layers. Their presence is a delicate dance with our planet, a balance of snowfall in winter and melting in summer, and their health is a direct indicator of the health of our global climate. The importance of these icy behemoths to life on Earth cannot be overstated. Glaciers act as the world's largest freshwater reservoirs, storing an astonishing 69% of all the fresh water on our planet. This is water that, for now, is locked away in a frozen state. For countless communities around the globe, from the high Andes to the Himalayas, the seasonal meltwater from glaciers is a lifeline. It provides a reliable source of drinking water, irrigates crops in dry seasons, and powers hydroelectric dams, supplying energy to millions. Without this predictable, slow release of water, entire ecosystems and human civilizations would face unimaginable challenges for survival. These colossal ice formations are born from a simple process: snow. In places where it is so cold that snow doesn't fully melt in the summer, it begins to accumulate year after year. The weight of the new snow compresses the older layers underneath, squeezing out the air and transforming the fluffy snowflakes into a dense, hard ice known as glacial ice. This process is incredibly slow, taking decades or even centuries. The result is a massive sheet of ice that is so heavy it begins to flow downhill, pulled by gravity. This movement, though often imperceptible to the naked eye, is powerful enough to grind rock into dust and move boulders the size of a house. Today, on this day, the 10th of November 2025, we are witnessing these ancient ice rivers retreating at an alarming rate. The delicate balance that has sustained them for millennia is being disrupted. As global temperatures rise, the rate of melting in summer has begun to far outpace the accumulation of new snow in winter. This retreat is not just a loss of beautiful scenery, it is a profound warning. It signals a fundamental shift in our planet's systems, one that carries with it far-reaching consequences for every living thing. The story of glaciers is becoming a story of disappearance, and we must understand what their loss means for the future of our world. Glaciers, in all their icy splendor, can generally be categorized into two main types, each with its own distinct character and scale. The first, and perhaps the more familiar, are the alpine glaciers. These are the glaciers of the mountains, also known as valley glaciers or mountain glaciers. They are born in high-altitude cirques, which are bowl-shaped hollows on the sides of mountains, and flow down valleys like frozen rivers. They are the sculptors of our most dramatic mountain scenery, responsible for carving out the U-shaped valleys, sharp-crested ridges, and pointed horns that define ranges like the Alps, the Rockies, and the Himalayas. They are, in essence, individual rivers of ice, confined by the rock walls around them. The second and far larger type of glacier is the continental ice sheet. These are not confined to valleys, but are immense, continent-sized blankets of ice that overwhelm the very landscape they sit upon. They are so vast and heavy that they bury entire mountain ranges beneath them, leaving only the very highest peaks, known as nunataks, poking through the ice. Today, only two such ice sheets exist on Earth: the Antarctic ice sheet and the Greenland ice sheet. Together, they are the undisputed titans of the cryosphere, the frozen parts of our planet. Their scale is almost beyond comprehension, and their influence on the global climate system is enormous, reflecting sunlight back into space and driving ocean currents. To understand the difference in scale, consider this: an alpine glacier might be a few kilometers long and hundreds of meters thick. The Greenland ice sheet, however, covers an area of 1.7 million square kilometers, and if it were to melt, it would raise sea levels by over 7 meters. The Antarctic ice sheet is even more colossal. It covers an area of nearly 14 million square kilometers, roughly the size of the United States and Mexico combined, and holds around 90% of all the ice on Earth. Its disappearance would mean a catastrophic sea level rise of approximately 60 meters. These are not just glaciers, they are frozen continents. The behavior of these two glacier types is also different. Alpine glaciers are highly sensitive to regional climate changes and can grow or shrink relatively quickly, acting as sensitive indicators of warming temperatures. Their meltwater is a critical resource for local populations, but their total volume is small compared to the ice sheets. The continental ice sheets, due to their sheer size, respond much more slowly. However, once their melting accelerates, it can become a self-sustaining process that is incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to reverse. Their fate is tied not just to regional, but to global climate stability, and their melting poses a threat to every coastline on the planet. The most direct and devastating consequence of all the world's glaciers melting would be a dramatic and permanent rise in global sea levels. As we have seen, the vast majority of Earth's freshwater is currently stored in the ice of Greenland and Antarctica, with a smaller, though still significant, amount held in alpine glaciers. If all this ice were to melt and flow into the oceans, the global mean sea level would rise by approximately 70 meters, or around 230 feet. This is a change of such magnitude that it would fundamentally and irrevocably alter the geography of our planet. It is not a question of higher tides or more frequent floods. It is a question of the permanent submersion of vast areas of land where billions of people live. To put this figure into perspective, a 70-meter rise is taller than a 20-story building. Imagine the ocean level not just reaching the front door of such a building, but rising all the way to its roof. This new water wouldn't just lap at the shores. It would surge inland, filling coastal plains, river valleys, and low-lying regions far from the current coastline. Entire countries would be wiped off the map, and the shape of our continents would become unrecognizable. The world as we know it, the world shown in our atlases and globes, would cease to exist. This is not a distant, abstract threat. It is the physical result of converting trillions of tons of solid ice into liquid water. The process would involve the two great ice sheets. The melting of all alpine glaciers and the Greenland ice sheet would contribute the first 7 to 8 meters of sea level rise. This alone would be catastrophic, inundating many of the world's most populous coastal cities. But the true giant is Antarctica. The West Antarctic ice sheet is considered particularly unstable, and its collapse alone could contribute over 3 meters to sea levels. The much larger East Antarctic ice sheet was once thought to be stable, but we are now learning that it too is vulnerable. The complete melting of this final, immense bastion of ice would add over 50 more meters, sealing the fate of coastal civilizations worldwide. It is important to understand that this would not happen overnight. The melting of such a colossal volume of ice would likely take centuries, or even millennia. However, the process, once it gains significant momentum, could become an unstoppable feedback loop. As ice melts, it exposes darker land or ocean beneath, which absorbs more sunlight, which in turn causes more warming and more melting. We would be setting in motion a geographical transformation of our planet, committing future generations to a world with a vastly different and diminished coastline. The decisions we make today will determine how much of this scenario becomes an inevitable reality. A 70-meter rise in sea level would not just be an inconvenience. It would be a geographical apocalypse, forcing the greatest redrawing of the world map in human history. Entire regions and nations would be lost to the sea. In North America, the entire Atlantic seaboard of the United States would be submerged. Florida would disappear completely, along with much of the Gulf Coast. Cities like New Orleans, Houston, Washington, D.C., New York, and Boston would be underwater. On the West Coast, the San Francisco Bay would expand, swallowing the Central Valley and turning Sacramento into an inland sea. The very heartlands and economic centers of the nation would be gone. Across the Atlantic, Europe would face a similar fate. The Netherlands, a country famously built on land reclaimed from the sea, would be almost entirely erased. Denmark would be reduced to a small cluster of islands. London, Venice, and Lisbon would be lost. The Black Sea would swell, merging with the Caspian Sea to create a vast inland ocean. In Asia, the devastation would be on an even more immense human scale. Bangladesh, a low-lying nation of about 165 million people, would be almost completely inundated. Vast, densely populated coastal areas of China, India, and Vietnam, home to hundreds of millions, would be submerged, displacing entire civilizations. The world's great cities, so many of which were built along coasts and rivers for trade and transport, would be the first to fall. Alexandria in Egypt, a cradle of ancient knowledge, would be lost. Sydney, Melbourne, Buenos Aires, Rio de Janeiro, Shanghai, Tokyo. The list of major metropolitan areas that would become modern-day Atlantises is staggering. This would trigger the largest mass migration events in human history, as billions of people are forced to abandon their homes and move inland. The social, economic, and political upheaval would be unimaginable, leading to conflicts over resources, space, and survival on a scale we have never witnessed before. Even regions far from the new coastlines would be transformed. The Amazon basin in South America would be flooded by the Atlantic, creating a huge inland sea and devastating the world's largest rainforest. In Australia, a continent known for its arid interior, the ocean would pour into the low-lying Nullarbor Plain, creating a new vast gulf and dividing the country in two. The world map that has been familiar to us for generations would become a historical artifact. The planet would have fundamentally new coastlines, new seas, and a greatly reduced land area on which humanity and the rest of terrestrial life would have to find a way to survive. Beneath the colossal ice sheet of Antarctica lies a hidden world, a continent of rock and earth that has been almost entirely concealed for millions of years. If all the ice were to melt away, this lost landmass would be revealed for the first time in human history. The continent we would see, however, would be very different from the one we imagine. The sheer weight of the ice, which is up to nearly 5 kilometers thick in places, has pushed the bedrock down. This phenomenon, known as isostatic depression, means that large parts of the continent are actually below sea level. Once the ice is gone, the land would slowly begin to rebound, but this process would take thousands of years. Initially, what would be revealed is not a single landmass, but a great archipelago of islands and 2 or 3 major landmasses. The area of West Antarctica, which is largely based on bedrock below sea level, would become a vast sea dotted with high mountainous islands. The Antarctic Peninsula, which already juts out from the continent, would become a long dragon-like chain of islands, resembling Japan or the Philippines. The much larger landmass of East Antarctica, which is based on higher ground, would remain as a true continent, though its new coastlines would be flooded and reshaped by the newly risen oceans, with deep fjords and bays penetrating far inland. This newly uncovered land would hold secrets of our planet's deep past. The Transantarctic Mountains, a range longer than the European Alps and currently almost entirely buried, would dominate the landscape of East Antarctica. We would likely find vast, ancient river systems, fossilized forests, and the remains of the dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures that roamed this land when it was part of the supercontinent Gondwana and enjoyed a temperate climate. It would be a geological and paleontological gold rush, offering an unprecedented window into Earth's history. But this scientific wonder would come at the cost of our current world. Furthermore, the revealed continent would not remain barren for long. As the global climate warms to a point capable of melting all the ice, Antarctica itself would become temperate, perhaps even subtropical in its northernmost reaches. Over centuries and millennia, life would begin to colonize this new land. Hardy mosses and lichens would be the pioneers, followed by grasses, shrubs, and eventually perhaps, even forests. Animals would arrive, migrating across the sea or carried by birds. Antarctica, the frozen continent, would be reborn as a green continent, a final, ironic twist in a story of global environmental change driven by humanity. The melting of all glaciers would unleash a cascade of devastating consequences for life, both in the oceans and on land. The oceans would suffer from a massive and sudden influx of fresh water. This would dramatically lower the salinity of the surface layers, particularly in the North Atlantic and the Southern Ocean, where the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets are melting. This change would be catastrophic for countless marine organisms, from tiny plankton to the great whales, which are adapted to live within a very specific range of salinity. Many species would be unable to adapt to this freshening of the sea, and would face mass extinction events. This influx of cold, fresh water would also disrupt the engine of global ocean circulation, the thermohaline circulation, often called the Great Ocean Conveyor Belt. This system transports heat around the globe, regulating climates. Warm, salty water flows north, cools, sinks, and flows south again. The addition of vast amounts of less dense fresh water would prevent the surface water from sinking, effectively shutting down or rerouting this current. This would paradoxically lead to severe cooling in regions like Northern Europe, plunging it into a climate more akin to Siberia, even as the rest of the world experiences extreme heat. The result would be climate chaos, with weather patterns becoming wildly unpredictable and extreme. On land, the impacts would be equally severe. The loss of alpine glaciers would mean the end of the reliable seasonal water supply that billions of people and entire ecosystems depend on. Rivers like the Ganges, the Indus, the Yangtze, and the Rhine, which are fed by glacial melt, would see their flows become erratic. They would swell with floodwaters in the short term as the glaciers melt away. But then, once the ice is gone, they would shrivel, becoming seasonal streams dependent only on rainfall. This would lead to widespread water shortages, agricultural collapse, and famine for a huge portion of the world's population, creating unprecedented humanitarian crises. The animals and plants that have evolved to live in or around the ice would have nowhere left to go. Polar bears, which rely on sea ice to hunt seals, would become extinct. Seals, walruses, and many species of penguins adapted to the Antarctic ice would lose their breeding and resting grounds. In the mountains, unique alpine flora and fauna that thrive in the cold conditions near glaciers would be pushed to higher and higher altitudes until they run out of mountain, vanishing forever. The world would become a far less biodiverse place, impoverished by the loss of countless species adapted to their frozen habitats. Beyond the more predictable, albeit disastrous effects of sea level rise and habitat loss, the complete melting of Earth's glaciers could unlock other, stranger dangers. Locked within the ancient ice are bubbles of ancient air, dust, and more worrisomely, ancient microbes. Permafrost and glacial ice have been a natural deep freeze for millennia, preserving bacteria and viruses from a distant past. As the ice melts, these ancient pathogens, for which modern animals and humans have no immunity, could be released and reawakened. We could face the threat of prehistoric pandemics, diseases caused by microbes that have not been in circulation for hundreds of thousands of years. The ice also acts as a repository for airborne toxins. For decades, industrial pollutants, pesticides like DDT, and radioactive particles from nuclear testing have been carried on the wind to the poles, where they have fallen with the snow and become trapped in the ice. The melting of the glaciers would release this concentrated cocktail of poisons back into the ecosystems and oceans. These toxins would bioaccumulate, moving up the food chain from plankton to fish, to seals, and finally to top predators, including humans, posing a severe and long-lasting health risk to life across the entire planet. The ice, which once protected us by trapping these dangers, would release them all at once. A final, truly planetary scale effect would be a change in the Earth's rotation. The Earth is not a perfect sphere. It bulges at the equator. The immense weight of the ice sheets, particularly Antarctica, currently sits at the South Pole. As this mass of ice melts and the water spreads out across the globe, it would be like a spinning figure skater moving their arms from their sides outwards. This redistribution of mass would cause the Earth's rotation to slow down ever so slightly, making our days a fraction of a second longer. It would also cause the planet's axis to wobble, slightly shifting the geographical location of the North and South Poles in a process known as polar wander. This future, a world without glaciers, is a stark and terrifying one. It is a world of shrunken continents, a chaotic climate, mass extinctions, and unforeseen dangers. The glaciers are more than just beautiful, frozen landscapes. They are a critical component of our planet's life support system. Their rapid melting today is the most powerful signal we have that this system is dangerously out of balance. While a complete meltdown is not an immediate threat, the path we are currently on is leading us in that direction. Caring for our glaciers, and by extension our climate, is not a matter of choice. It is a matter of preserving the world that has nurtured us, and ensuring a stable future for generations to come.